That a man pays his own debts, discharges his own obligations. That they are all that make him a man. You have an obligation to my brother, and yet you ask me to assume it.
Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I wanted to welcome any new visitors. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Today on the Classic Movie Reviews podcast, we are taking on the Yakuza, 1974. This is a rather strange movie that is clearly in the 1970s style. Robert Mitchum is good as he teaches a younger character, played by Richard Jordan. The film has some shocking elements as it delves into Japanese concepts of honor and debt. Quote, Yakuza, also known as the Extreme Path, are members of a transnational organized crime syndicate originating in Japan. They call themselves chivalrous organizations. The Yakuza are notorious for their strict code of conduct, their organized fiefdom nature, and several unconventional ritual practices such as yubitsumi, or amputation of the left little finger. Members are often described as males with heavily tattooed bodies and slicked hair. Unquote. On March 20th, 1975, New York Times film critic Vincent Canby wrote in an article titled, The Yakuza, a cinematic hybrid about obligation. Quote, Beware the Yakuza. This movie, which opened yesterday at the Criterion and Beekman Theaters, is a cinematic hybrid that crosses American stars, writers, and a director with a popular Japanese film form. To come upon it unsuspectingly is a little like opening an almond joy wrapper and finding inside the arrangement of fish, rice, and seaweed known as nori maki. The effect is surprising. The contents prove, upon examination, not unattractive. But the product as a whole has the potential for evoking revulsion or ridicule from anyone whose mind clenches at the exotic or whose heart is firmly set upon an almond joy. Unquote. The great film critic Roger Ebert rates this movie 3.5 stars out of 4. He had very nice things to say about the film, such as, quote, Here's the first American version of Japan's favorite genre, the Yakuza movie, and it's a handsome, expensive production with great performances by Robert Mitchum and a scary one by Ken Takakura, Japan's box office champion, unquote. But Ebert issued a warning also saying, quote, a superior action movie, but all the same, it is for audiences that have grown accustomed over the last few years to buckets of blood, disembowelment, and severed hands flying through the air, unquote. Ebert also says, quote, both Mitchum and Ken are representatives of an obsolete breed. As the movie ads have it, a man doesn't forget, a man pays his debt, unquote. Cinephile and Beyond captioned an article by Sven Mikulek as, quote, Sidney Pollack's The Yakuza, the merging of two worlds into a timeless gangster classic, unquote. IMDb.com has this movie at a reasonably low 7.2. It didn't fare much better on RottenTomatoes.com, with 53% on the tomato meter and 72% audience approval. Of course, not all the mainstream critics liked it. I would have to say, following the above, it's an excellent film if you're looking for this kind of film. I like that it takes the LA detective, played masterfully by Robert Mitchum, and splices this into Japanese gangster films in the vein of Black Rain 1989. And since it was the first to do so, this film holds an essential place in the history of both genres. This film is sometimes called neo-noir, but I'm not sure if it meets the definition. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Robert Mitchum plays a former occupation military police officer and semi-retired private eye Harry Kilmer. This great film noir actor was first covered in the fantastic film Out of the Past, 1947. Brian Keith played the role of American businessman George Tanner, who starts the action when his daughter is kidnapped. Keith was first covered in The Hallelujah Trail, 1965. Richard Jordan is Dusty, an American sent to help Harry Kilmer rescue the kidnapped girl. Jordan was first covered in The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973. Ken Takakura played Tanaka Ken. Takakura is perfect for this role because he is known for his stoic style of acting, and this character is stiff. Takakura was born in Japan in 1931. He graduated from the Meiji University in Tokyo. Following an audition in 1955, Takakura began getting roles in films like Lightning Karate Blow 1956. He was in the right place and rose with the growing Japanese film industry. He became a star in Japan with Abarichi Bangachai 1965. His international films include the Yakuza 1974, Black Rain 1989 as a stoic detective, and Mr. Baseball 1992 as a stoic baseball manager in Japan. His last film was Riding Alone for Thousands of Miles, 2005. Takakura died in 2014. Herb Edelman played the rather strange role of Wheat, an American that stayed in Japan to teach and live with his cats and massive weapon collection. Edelman was born in 1933 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He studied acting at Brooklyn College and began professional acting with a touring company in 1961. He began working on television in 1964 and was prolific in this medium. He is known for a few movies that include Barefoot in the Park 1967, The Odd Couple 1968, and California Suite 1978. Most people remember him as Dorothy's husband Stanley on The Golden Girls 1985 to 1992. Edelman died in 1996. Christine Kokubo played Hanoko, the daughter of Aiko. Kukobo was born in Detroit in 1950. Her first movie role is in today's movie, The Yakuza 1974. In 1976, she had a significant role in the star-studded Midway 1976. She appeared on television shows The Blue Knight and Hawaii Five-0 in 1976. Following a small role in Just Between Friends 1986, she landed a long-term role on television's St. Elsewhere 1984 to 1988. She did more television but never made another full-length movie. She taught for 7 years at the Braille Institute in Los Angeles and was a leading force in creating Changing Perspectives, a theater for the blind. Sadly, Kukobo died early in 2007 of breast cancer. Kiko Kishi played the love interest, Aiko. She was born in Japan in 1932. She primarily worked in Japanese film. She started acting in 1950. Her best-known films are Bamiki, 1955, Brother, 1960, The Yakuza, 1974, Ka-chan, 2001, and The Twilight Samurai, 2002. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The credits roll with a history of the Yakuza and their concept of honor. Ripe with ceremony, a non-clan Japanese gangster, Kato Kayosuke Mashida, reports to a clan criminal for an international assignment. He is to go to Los Angeles and is given a piece of cloth. The credits continue showing the full-body tattoos of the Yakuza members. At the port of Los Angeles, Dusty, Richard Jordan, waits for the arrival of Kato. The scene cuts, and the piece of cloth, the sleeve of a woman's dress, is being shown to George Tanner, Brian Keith. Kato tells him he must return to Tokyo within 4 days and settle his business with Tono, Ihai Okada. Kato says if Tanner does not make the trip, he will return with more than a piece of cloth. Dusty comes in with his gun drawn, but Tanner tells him to put it away. At a beach house, Harry Kilmer, Robert Mitchum, is trying to understand why his plant is dying when the phone rings. It's Harry's old friend Tanner saying that his daughter has been kidnapped. When they meet, Harry wants Tanner to go to the police. Tanner asks Harry to contact Tanaka Ken Takakura, a man that Tanner says will do anything for Harry. Harry is not happy about the job. Harry asks about Kiko Kishi, and is told he sees her each Christmas at Kilmer House, and she always asks about Harry. On the ride to the airport, Tanner tells Harry that he is sending Dusty, who is a child of one of their old friends and personal bodyguard for Tanner, along to help. Harry is put on edge when he realizes Tanner has a personal bodyguard and insists that he and Harry not fly on the same plane. The scene switches to a cemetery in Japan where Aiko is visiting a marker. Harry and Dusty arrive at the Tokyo airport and they are met by another old friend, Wheat, Herbert Edelman, who also knows Dusty's parents. Wheat tells that Dusty's dad and Harry were the tough guys during the occupation, and he and Tanner were the brains. Harry, Wheat, Tanner, and Dusty's dad all served in the occupation of Japan following World War II. The occupation by the U.S. and other allies lasted from August 14, 1945, and ended on April 28, 1952. Harry and Dusty go to stay at Wheat's house. Wheat has a traditional Japanese house, but the walls are loaded with guns, swords, and other weapons. Harry asks why Wheat and Tanner are no longer in contact. Dusty cuts his hand with a samurai sword. Harry leaves the house. Wheat gives a lecture on using samurai swords to destroy evil.
For the Zen master, the sword is not to destroy other human beings, but his own greed, anger, and folly. The forger and the user of the sword should live in such a way that it comes to stand for the annihilation of anything in the way of justice, peace, and humanity.
And then he gives the backstory on where Harry has gone. Following the war, Aiko was left alive with her daughter. Instead of becoming a prostitute, she became a black marketeer. Harry and Aiko met in 1949 when he saved her from being killed. They fell in love. Harry took care of Aiko and her daughter Hanoko, Christine Kokubu. Aiko said she loved Harry but could never marry him. In 1951, Aiko's brother, Tanaka Ken, returned after living in the jungle for 6 years following the war. Tanaka Ken thanked Harry for saving his family. He told Aiko that he would never speak to her again because she had placed him in debt to his enemy. Aiko stopped seeing Harry. Harry bought her a coffee house/bar named Kilmer House before leaving the country. Tanaka Ken went on to becoming one of the most successful Yakuza after he turned away from his sister. Harry arrives at Kilmer House, and it's clear that he and Aiko are still in love. Aiko, who is overcome with emotion, excuses herself to continue closing the bar. Hanoko comes in and doesn't recognize Harry at first. Finally, she welcomes Harry back. Aiko and Harry look through photo albums showing their time after the war. When Harry asks about Tanaka Ken, the talk gets very tense. After refusing another marriage proposal, Aiko tells Harry how he can get in touch with Tanaka Ken.
God damn, I'm getting too old for this.
Of course, I'll always...
Always what? Love me? Then marry me. Well, now that we've got that over with for the next 20 years.
Harry goes to the Kendo Hall in Kyoto. Kendo is a Japanese martial art that uses bamboo swords and armor to practice swordsmanship and Zen. The next day at the Kendo Hall, dozens of men are practicing, and Tanaka Ken is the head instructor. He uses a real samurai sword for his practice. A sign on the wall says, "The sword is the mind. If the mind is right, the sword is right." When Ken sees Harry, he dismisses the class. Ken greets Harry with a respectful san. Harry says he needs to ask a favor, and Ken replies he has an obligation that he can never repay. The two men have an awkward conversation about Tono, Ihai Okada, and his Yakuza clan. Ken does not think Tono would kidnap an American student until Harry tells him that Tono and Tanner are in business together. Tanner was supposed to deliver some guns, but lost the shipment. Harry tells Ken that Tanner originally lent the money to him to buy Kilmer House for Aiko. Harry asks Ken to speak to Tono. Ken says he is no longer Yakuza, but will try. At Wheat's house, Harry loads up on pistols for him and Dusty. Harry, Dusty, and Ken head to Tono's hideout. Harry begins to explain the concept of Jiri to Dusty.
That guy doesn't like you.
No, not much.
So how come you figure you can trust him?
Giri?
Edie?
Yeah. Giri. Obligation.
You mean he figures he owes you something?
Yeah, sort of.
Well, that can work two ways, Kilmer. If you ain't alive tomorrow, he don't owe you shit.
It is an obligation to someone, but it is a burden also because it is arduous to repay. The three men approach the hideout. All of the men inside are gambling and not paying attention. The men inside are armed only with swords. Ken is also only carrying a sword. Harry and Dusty bust inside with their guns drawn. The kidnapped girl is laying on the floor, drugged. When a gangster enters the room, Dusty shoots him. Ken comes inside but is not seen by the gangsters. When another gangster comes in, Ken chops his arm off. A couple of Tono's men are killed. They get the girl and another kidnapped victim in the car. A car stops him and it is driven by Kato. He calls Ken the man that never smiles. Kato says Tono will have to know that Ken is using the sword again. Harry and company are allowed to leave. They return the daughter to Tanner. Harry is worried about retaliation being directed towards Ken. Ken says the entire Yakuza Council would have to authorize action against him. Harry and Dusty are getting ready to leave Japan when Aiko comes by. Aiko tells Harry that Ken stopped by after midnight. She says Ken is in danger even though he would never say so. Aiko tells Harry that Ken has a brother, Goro James Shigeta, who is an advisor to all Yakuza clans. Harry goes back to Kyoto to meet Goro. Goro tells Harry that Ken referred to him as the strange stranger. Goro says Tono will try to kill Ken. Goro shows Harry the ideogram for path and says it can also mean obligation. Goro says Harry has an obligation to Ken and he must fulfill it.
It can also mean duty, obligation, even God. When my brother spoke of you as a unique stranger, I took it to mean that you are a Westerner who held values consistent with ours. That a man pays his own debts, discharges his own obligations. That they are all that make him a man. You have an obligation to my brother, and yet you ask me to assume it.
Tono has ordered Ken's death. If Goro tries to interfere with his brother, Goro will be discredited. Goro says Ken has three choices. He can apologize and be under obligation to Tono, he can be killed, or he can kill Tono. A man in Tono's position must be killed with a sword, but Harry can kill him with a gun. Harry struggles with how he will fulfill his obligation to Ken. At one of Tono's hideouts, about 20 men are gambling. Tanner and Kato come to see Tono. Tanner apologizes and asks if he can help. Tanner bought futures and lost all the money. He never bought the guns. Then, Tanner is ordered to have Harry killed. Aiko and Hanoko are at the house with Wheat, Dusty, and Harry. Hanoko explains to Dusty about Yakuza cutting their left pinky off to save their lives if they make a grave offense. Harry leaves to find Ken. He locates him in a brothel where one of the worst singers ever is crooning about the Yakuza. Harry reminds Ken that Aiko and Hanoko will be in danger. Ken refuses to let Harry take the women folks away. After Harry leaves, three men follow Ken into the bathroom. They tell Ken they are paid to kill Harry. Ken says Harry is family. They explain that Ken's death has been paid for as well, but they don't want to undertake the job. Ken goes to an arcade. He talks to an older man that says Tono wants Ken dead, but he could be stopped if his dealings with Tanner were revealed. Harry and Dusty go to a Japanese bath. Dusty has a crush on Hanoko. A tatted Yakuza man swims underwater and stabs Harry in the belly with a short sword, Tanto. Harry overpowers him and stabs the assassin. Before the man dies, he says Tanner sent him. Dusty is shocked. Everyone goes back to Wheat's house. Dusty asks Ken about Jiwi. Ken says it's more of a burden and it's called the burden hardest to bear. Dusty asks what happens if you don't fulfill your obligation. Ken can't explain why they do it. Ken comes in where Aiko is stroking Harry's hair. She was trying to explain how Tanner was always untrustworthy. Dusty confesses that he was sent by Tanner to watch Harry. He says Tanner and Tono have been working to take over Goro's position. Dusty had been ordered out by Tanner, but he now asked to stay and help.
When Tanner sent me over here, it wasn't just to watch out for you. It was to watch you, too. Tanner's been trying to help Tono take over this guy Goro's position. And he thought maybe if you found out about it, you might make more trouble than you cleared up.
Okay, Hotshot. You better get yourself out of here.
Yeah. That's what Tanner said. I'd like to stay here now and do what I can.
Ken and Harry leave to have a discussion. Ken now thinks Harry should take Aiko and Hanoko. He implies Harry does not owe him, but Harry has taken up the burden. Back at Wheat's house, Hanoko is doing the green tea ceremony for Dusty, way before Daniel-san and Kumiko tried it. Just then, a group of Yakuza gangsters break into the house. They capture Aiko and force Dusty to drop his gun. A total of 5 men invade the house, including one wearing a hat. Dusty attacks and is stabbed by one of the gangsters. A gangster shoots towards Aiko and Hanoko. Dusty is stabbed. Ken and Harry come back and join the fight. Ken uses a bike as a weapon way before Jackie Chan. Harry is using a gun. When he runs out of bullets, the dying Dusty shoots a gangster and saves Harry's life. Wheat spends the entire fight hollering, "Oh God, please stop it." Yeah, that'll work. The guy with the hat escapes. Both Dusty and Hanoko are dead. Harry tells Goro about the fight. Ken shows up unexpectedly. Harry decides he is going after Tono and Tanner. Goro asks that his son not be killed if possible. Goro says he has a spider tattoo on his head. Ken agrees to protect the man. Goro finally tells Harry what everybody knows. Ken is actually Aiko's husband and not her brother.
Before Ken dies, there's something I think you might want to know. You may have been surprised to hear that Tanaka Eiko and Ken had an older brother still living. I'm not Eiko's brother. On the other hand, neither is Ken. Ken is her husband. When he returned 5 years after the war, he found you with his wife. He was enraged that she was living with a foreigner, and yet grateful to you for saving her life.
When Ken returned from the war, he was enraged that his wife and child were living with the enemy, but he was pleased that Harry took care of them as well. This was the basis of Ken's confused obligation. Harry goes to the place where Tanner is staying. Harry bursts in and kills the security guards. He finds Tanner and puts a half a dozen slugs in him. Ken again tries to send Harry away, but he refuses. Ken and Harry break into a protected compound. Ken has a sword, and Harry has a couple of pistols and a double-barrel shotgun. Again, all of the gangsters are drinking and gambling. They break in, and Ken rushes towards Tono. Two men begin a sword fight. The other gangsters begin shooting at Harry. All hell breaks loose. It's a real Donnybrook with swords and guns. Ken kills Tono while Harry is wearing out the others with his guns. Ken faces several swordsmen and says he was only here for Tono. They don't care, and he has to start killing them off. Ken is checking for spider tattoos as he fights. Ken and Harry kill off most of the gangsters, much to their own surprise. Harry gets cut, and Hat Guy comes in. When he takes off his hat, surprise, he has a spider tattoo. But after Ken killed 18 other guys, I would not jump in to fight him. Ken kills the spider guy. The wounded and battered Ken and Harry begin to head out. They meet Kato. After Kato looks around for a second, he picks up a sword. Tired and hurt, Ken still easily defeats him. Ken kills the man while he's on the ground. Ken goes to the cemetery to pray at Hanoko's grave. He also prays to his father for killing his nephew. Harry says goodbye to Aiko. Goro says the police believe the killing was a feud between Tanner and Tono. Ken begins to pull out a knife to kill himself for his murder of his nephew. His brother forbids it. Quickly, Ken pulls out the knife and cuts the pinky off his left hand. He gives it wrapped in a handkerchief to his brother. When the brother accepts, the debt for the dead nephew is paid. Harry says he is going back to the U.S., and Ken is going back to Kyoto. Harry is riding to the airport in a taxi when he asks the driver to turn around. In a flashback, Harry tells Wheat that he has destroyed Ken's past and future.
Oliver, Hanako was Ken's child.
What are you talking about?
Eiko is not Ken's sister. She's his wife. I destroyed his past and his future.
Harry arrives at Ken's apartment and asks for a formal meeting. While Ken is making tea, Harry takes out a handkerchief and a knife. He cuts the pinky off his left hand and wraps it up. When Ken returns, he cannot believe what has happened. Harry says he has brought pain into Ken's life in the past and present. Harry offers the severed finger to Ken. Harry asks that Ken forgive him and Aiko. Finally, Ken accepts and says, "No man has a greater friend." Ken and Harry say goodbye at the airport. Each man has a bandaged left hand. Harry takes one last look back at Japan and bows to Ken. Ken returns the bow. I'll be back with conclusions and the world-famous short summary following a word from our sponsors. Summary. When I was growing up, it was not uncommon to hear a news story every year or so that a Japanese soldier had been found on an island and had finally surrendered. This happened for several reasons. Some believed the Japanese emperor was divine and could not be defeated. Others thought the surrender announcement was a trick. Still others just refused to give up because of their ideological beliefs. Damn Confederates. The last Japanese soldier to come out of hiding during World War II was Hiro Onoda. He was transferred to one of the smaller Philippine islands on December 26, 1944. He and 2 other soldiers went into the jungle to keep up resistance, as was the general order. He continued to resist surrender until March 9, 1974. At that time, he was 52 years old. The other 2 men were killed earlier as they carried out actions that to them were war, but to the locals were acts of terrorism. Private Nakamura, born in Taiwan, was discovered later than Onoda, but he is not listed as the last Japanese soldier. He spoke neither Japanese nor Chinese. Nakamura came out on December 18, 1974. World famous short summary: with friends like these, who needs enemies? I hope you enjoyed today's show. You can find connections to social media and email at the site at classicmovierev.com or in the podcast show notes. If you enjoyed this show, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, you can tell a friend, colleague, or family member about the show, or leave a review at Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show get found. If you want to comment, suggest a movie, or help out, contact me by email at jec@classicmovierev.com, like Rick did last month. Beware the Moors.